Most of our beginnings are usually like you going,
Uh, ooh. Oh. Um. 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 Ah.
all right.
That's the baby Jesus in the manger.
Why does he look like a pumpkin?
That's a wise man.
He's a pumpkin on a cot.
That's the wise man, and this is the donkey.
Why is the donkey look like the bunny from Donnie Darko?
Oh
And
my god.
what?
Were we?
Yeah. Oh, hey, here we go. Tell our audience what this is and what it represents.
Okay.
So much editing to do.
Okay. So okay. So apparently back in the 1980s there was a comic book called Star Wars. And apparently we made a bunch of the comic books, but apparently I wasn't live yet, so I couldn't read the comic books. And apparently I never read a Star Wars comic book before. And they made 107 of them, and apparently they stopped then because they didn't make any more after that. Apparently I was really freaking out that they stopped it at 107 comic books. But I never, ever got to read any of the Star Wars comic books because I wasn't alive yet.
You actually were alive when they were out. So one of the neat things about the comic book, the Marvel comic series from the 70s all the way up into like 86, I think they went to, is that Star Wars, these comics were the first expanded universe stories outside of the movie, even before the Star Wars holiday special.
And they're not canon.
Not anymore. They were at the time.
Apparently.
Well, I think they're not A canon. I think they're like C canon, which means that if they're brought in, if references to them are brought in, those things become canon. But yeah, so the first couple of issues of the old Star Wars comic had this big green rabbit named Jackson that people now kind of mock a little bit when they talk about the comics back then, but it was pretty cool when you were.
And he was badass.
He was, yeah. And they brought him back for this. He's in there.
Yeah. I just read it and I don't remember the story.
I read it last night again, just so I'd be a little more fresh on it. There was a character in the early issues, I think around number 14 or whatever, that had this kind of cyborg type character. I think his name was Valance, and he was killed by some. He was severely injured by some droids, and then turned into a cyborg, or kept alive as a cyborg. And through this issue, we sort of go revisit that character and see his motivations for uh, taking such delight in destroying droids, it's because he kind of sees himself in them and he has sort of a self-hatred. But he had an encounter with Luke and C-3PO at some point. I'm not going to pretend. I've only, I read a bunch of issues, but I didn't read the whole run, so I don't know every little thing or anything like that. But it was still neat to see, those characters brought back.
Yeah.
And one of the things is Luke and C-3PO taught him compassion, and that's a major component of the story this time out. It also revisits an old plot line of Crimson Forever, which is a virus, a disease that killed off could kill off most of the universe if these rocks are all brought together. And there's some people who want to bring the rocks together because they want to see the world burn, and there's some people who want to bring the rocks together because they can actually be used to heal. And Valance, I think his name is, who's the cyborg, wants to get his hands on them because he thinks they can make him whole again.
And isn't that what happens?
No, not if you read the book.
I did read it. Why can't I remember?
Well, I worried the same thing would happen to me. That's why I read it again yesterday.
Yeah, I should have read it.
One of the things that was kind of weird, or one of the things that was, it plays to me almost like a series of issues that was shrunken down and to fit into one story because it's very segmented and chapter-like. I don't see chapters too often in these kind of stories.
Right.
It feels almost to me like they made 7 issues and then condensed them.
And they
as well, but
they could have just restarted the series. I mean, Jesus, there's so many comic books out there.
Well, I think that might have been the original plan, I'm guessing. And then someone said, well, this isn't going to take off as much, probably. I'm guessing about that, but
see, I would have started a monthly subscription type of thing if they were going to continue off where the story left off.
Mm-hmm. Well, they tied up a lot of what was left open, and there's certainly a place left for them to continue making more of them if they want to. But I don't see it, for whatever reason, maybe somebody decided that it wasn't something that should be a monthly series.
I think it would have been great, or even if they do it quarterly.
Yeah, it was nice, and that's one of the things I liked about Force Awakens was it felt to me like those early comic books with Han Solo in the cantina meeting up with strange characters and going on adventures, and has a lot of that this time.
Yeah. If you think of Solo as a comic book,
mm-hmm.
it doesn't make you so upset that he doesn't really look like Han Solo.
It doesn't make me upset. I know that's one of the big sticking points for you.
Yeah.
Is that in the movie Solo, he doesn't look like Harrison Ford.
At least he doesn't look like the Han Solo from the holiday special cartoon.
Oh, yeah.
Right there. I didn't understand why Han Solo never had his eyes open.
That whole cartoon.
Yeah,
he did have some kind of sleeping sickness, didn't he?
I don't know.
I think that was the storyline of the cartoon, is that there was this comatose sleeping virus that everybody had, and Boba Fett was supposed to help them find a cure to this, and then Boba Fett betrays them in some way.
Yeah, well, he was in cahoots with Vader the whole time,
right? For whatever reason, I don't exactly know what the goal was, because he doesn't just he doesn't try to kill them or anything. He just takes off and says, "Oops, I've been found out. Let's get out of here."
Yeah, he backs off and goes, "I'll see you again," and Rocket Boy's out of there. They're like, well, that was anticlimactic.
Yeah, I love that cartoon. But
it's a funny cartoon.
Yeah, but this is very much in the spirit of that old stuff, and that's what I liked about Force Awakens at first, because it kind of feels like it's going back to. I didn't know how to feel about Luke. I mean, about Han going back to his life of not really crime, but yeah, it's crime. It's smuggling in Force Awakens.
No, because he had a freighter at that point, so he was hauling stuff, but I don't know if it was always illegal.
Yeah. Well, Rathtars was probably illegal.
Yeah. Good reason.
Yeah. So I mean, but the thing that I liked about that, and I love that movie. We'll get into that when we discuss that movie. But the thing that I liked about that is that it really took me back into the feeling I had when I was 7 years old, reading those comics, and yeah, Han Solo in another bar with Chewbacca, just meeting up with dudes.
Yeah.
Going on adventures. And that spirit's sort of alive in this comic.
Yeah, I liked it.
There's a lot of reading to do in this comic. It's not like a lot of these new comics you get where there's like 9 pages of explosions and people flying away and then a couple lines of dialogue. You actually sit down and read this book.
Yeah.
Trying to illustrate the opposite of what I say. Hey, there's a lot of reading in this book.
I do. Yeah.
There's a lot of dialogue, a lot of story.
Yeah.
It is written in that kind of style that the old ones were written in, kind of like when you're, written more for children. I wouldn't say it's a children's book, but it is written very,
yeah,
kind of an over-explaining kind of thing in a little bit in there, but it kind of adds to the
comic book flavor.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
So I'd say press
no.
Open. If you're a fan of the old Star Wars series, it's not that much money online to find a copy, and it's worth your time, worth your effort.
Yeah, it is definitely worth a read. It is. It's very nostalgic for those of us who collected the comic book.
And like
I got on board at, I think it was issue 71.
Oh, you were late.
I was a late comer.
Yeah, I was on board from, I don't want to say day one, but my uncle gave me the movie adaptation, that giant one that you have the first one, and then he gave me that one and part 2, which was the whole movie adaptation, and then like a couple months later, he just brought a bunch of comic books over, and 7. So I read like number 7, 8, 9, and 10 like right back to back. I had them right away. So and then that was around the same time that he told me, yeah, there's going to be 9 Star Wars movies too, and I was like, just couldn't get enough.
Yeah.
So I was an early adopter, but being a late adopter, you probably read more of the books than I did, because I dipped in and out throughout the series. I didn't sit there and read them every month.
Yeah, over the years, I've picked up various patches of copies of, like, in the 30s and in the 50s. I picked up like 4 or 5 of each. Just in situations that I was able to do that, and just kind of read a little bit of the back area as well of it. I wanted to have them out here so I could kind of show a comparison of the older comics to the new one. And I mean, they're just in the other room, but yeah. So I mean, I really enjoyed the series. There were parts of it I didn't like very much in there, but that usually only lasted like a book or 2.
I do think that I did get the sense that they floundered a lot, because between Star Wars and Empire, it was they could do what they wanted with the stories kind of and not be affected by the continuity. But once Empire happened, they had to make sure all their books after Empire and between Jedi did not feature Han Solo in any way, except in like flashbacks or whatever. So there's a lot of meandering and trying to make sure that they don't touch on certain things for 3 years. And then after Jedi came out, they were kind of in a bind, because they had done things with the characters that Jedi kind of ignored. So they kind of had to tie up their own story, while Jedi kind of got pushed aside and made into like a movie adaptation. The Empire Strikes Back, they actually included as part of the Star Wars series, the comic series, but Return of the Jedi had to have its own adaptation because it screwed with the continuity too much of what they had done before. So I think there was a lot of floundering, and I think that's what maybe made me not read that phase of the comics, although now I wish I had.
I think they're available in trade paperbacks now.
Yeah, you can get omnibus versions of them. They're a bit pricey these days. I think some of them are out of print, but
Oh wow.
yeah, but you can get them. They're out there.